Welcome viewers. On behalf of Iravati Research and Communication Center, this is Pratim Ranjan Bose. In this episode, we will discuss modernization of Indian Armed Forces. We have with us Brigadier Niladri Mukherjee, a highly decorated officer. Brigadier Mukherjee served the Indian Army for 35 years and is now the Secretary of the Kolkata-based Think-Tank, Center for Eastern and Northeastern Regional Studies, or CENERS-K. Welcome, Brigadier.
Thank you.
Modernization of Indian Armed Forces is a well-discussed topic. India has world's third largest army in terms of manpower. However, the armed forces need to be modernized, keeping in tune with the change in technology and changed perspective of modern warfare. Powerful nations keep large armies, not necessarily to go to war. In fact, there are theories if the world will see another full-scale major war, or there will only be limited-scale armed engagements. The nature of Russia-Ukraine conflict is a pointer in this direction. Strong army symbolizes hard power, which is a necessity in maintaining the power balance. This is important for an aspiring world major like India. IRCC is not a platform to discuss security issues. However, such issues have a bearing on geopolitics, which influences economics, trade, and neighborhood relations, which are our priority. From this perspective, the recent dramatic change in the recruitment policy of armed forces caught our attention, as it might have long-term impact on many economic affairs, including the skill market. After a 2-year pause in recruitment due to pandemic, the Indian Armed Forces announced a new recruitment policy, Agnipath, for soldiers. As per the policy, 17 to 21-year-old boys and girls will be recruited in the army on a short service of 4 years. The salary package is above the current pay scales for persons with similar experience. On completion of the service, 25% of the recruits will be taken in the force for longer term of duty, which we call permanent. This will reduce the average age of Indian forces from 32 to mid-20s. The rest 75% will go home with a fat separation package of 11.5 lakh on average. These trained hands will enjoy preference in recruitment in Central Armed Paramilitary Forces, State Police Force, etc. This scheme also offers an option for the young recruits to complete degree through a short course in Indira Gandhi National Open University. There will not be any other form of recruitment from now onwards. With time, short service recruits will form 50% of total armed forces personnel in India. Such service is not new to the world. Many countries made military services mandatory for citizens. This is known as conscription. Apart from European countries, Russia, Iran, Brazil, South Korea, Israel, China, and others follow such practices, though all may not follow it in letter and spirit. This apart, there are short service provisions in many countries. America enrolls personnel for 4 years, which is followed by a 4-year reserve duty period, where they can be recalled in case the need arises. Interestingly, even in India, 25% of armed forces officers are on short service. Given this background, let's go to the discussion. Brigadier Mukherjee, most of us are exposed to the debates on the pressing need for modernization of Indian armed forces for decades. For unknown reasons, most such debates centered on technology or appointment of Chief of Defence Staff in the past. Even top army officials rarely spoke on human resource issues, which is apparently the most crucial for defense forces. We are now hearing about Kargil Review Committee report, that was submitted to Parliament in 2000, and even reports from mid 1980s, which stressed on the need for a more youthful army. My questions to you are three. First, why such crucial issues were less discussed in public? I mean, of course, you being an army might be knowing about it, but most of us, even, I mean, someone like me who has been a public commentator for so many years, didn't know much about Kargil report and etc. And that reducing the need for reducing average age. B, why did these committees feel the need to lower the average age? What was the trigger? And C, as an officer and in critical situations, did you feel constrained by high average age of soldiers? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking the right questions. In fact, I mean, we have had a huge amount of debate insofar as this scheme momentarily that has been rolled out as to what exactly it implies. And we have seen across our television screens a lot of panelists coming across and discussing the whole thing. But these pertinent questions need answers. Firstly, you asked why such crucial issues were less discussed in public.
Right.
One factor that comes to my mind is that normally there is a confidentiality that is normally surrounding any security issues that are discussed in-house in a country. You would definitely agree that most modern armies would not try and expose the fissures within their army. And any reforms that they carry out would be carried out mostly secretively unless there is a necessity to take the nation into confidence. In this circumstance, we always claim that the Indian Army is not only modern, but it is capable of defending its frontiers, and that we are at the moment one of the largest standing armies in the world with resources which are matching most of the developed countries in the world. We buy some of the most sophisticated weapons from across the globe. However, we who have served in the army and the political dispensation of the day also know how much of an outlay or budget is going into modernizing the army. And what are the changes that are taking place in the battlefield? These are issues which are discussed threadbare and wargamed in the armed forces, in the think tanks, and among certain select committees of the Government of India. And therefore, most of these issues, which we immediately don't find answers to, and which are going to have far-reaching implications insofar as employment considerations are concerned, allocation of budget are concerned, are not debated openly in Parliament or not openly put on in the public. As far as I can see, that when we discussed this particular issue of reforms, you would remember that right from 1989, the process of modernizing the army had already started in phases, and it's a long gestation period. The modernization does not only mean procurement of sophisticated weapons. Modernization is a number of things which we will discuss subsequently. And therefore, all these one by one take a lot of time. For instance, infrastructure development in the war zone, that is the frontiers, capability to build up our early warning detection, capability to build up our surveillance elements, capability to build up and integrate the civilian as well as the services, both of them integrated and synergized into operation of war. Greater civil military coordination, integration of service headquarters, now creating theater commands. All this takes time, and therefore most of these issues have been processed, but not much has been debated in public. This was the first time that a new recruitment policy has been, this is affecting the common man, especially in the sphere of employment generation. Because
if I can add, this is the first time This is the
Yes.
first time. Whenever we
Yes.
spoke of in the past, the public debate surrounding modernization was on a theoretical plane. For the first time, this has come to real life.
Yes, I agree with you, because in this case, it is, you see, two of the largest organizations which generate huge amount of employment. One was already well known, the railways, and the second was the armed forces. And there was this last pandemic, 2 years when the recruitment did not take place. There were a lot of apprehensions about what is going to happen to the youth who traditionally wanted to join the army from the areas which are always much keen to join the armed forces, like Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Bihar, and most of these other states like Himachal, Uttarakhand. Traditionally, the soldiers, and from there are villages where not a single house is there where a serving soldier is not there, or a retired ex-serviceman is not there. So therefore, when recruitment of this generation, recruitment of such large numbers take place, it has to be debated in public. And therefore, when it was rolled out, there was this large debate. Suddenly, when one realizes that it's only for 4 years that these Agniveers will be there in the armed forces, and only 25% would be retained, and the 75% would be demobilized, so to say. And thereafter, there would be no security, as is seen by the larger public, that these 75% people will have no benefit of pensions, no medical support, and therefore, where do they go? So therefore, for the first time, I think this has been discussed in public, so that the issues are not only debated threadbare, but apprehensions in the mind of the people are absolutely erased. So that's what I feel is the necessity when large-scale generation of employment takes place. Now, why did these committees feel the need to lower the average age? This I would like to explain to you. Firstly, there was a time when, during the 71 operations and thereabouts, a commanding officer in the rank of a lieutenant colonel would be having about 13 or 14 years of service. That is to say, if he was commissioned in the age of 20 or 21, by about 33 or 34, he was a commanding officer leading a unit which has about 800 odd people. It could be a cutting-edge infantry battalion or an armored regiment, or for that matter, supporting arms. But he would be a lieutenant colonel with about 32, 33 years of age. Thereafter, subsequently over the decades, this particular period, already a lot of debate started all in the army that there is stagnation in the ranks. A person who became a lieutenant colonel could not become a brigadier for the next 10 years, while his counterparts in the civil with 18 years of service would automatically become a substantive joint secretary. By about 25 years, he would be an additional secretary. Here, things went to such a stage, but by the time you were 20, 22 years, you still didn't get command of a unit. There was so much of stagnation that had taken place. Large-scale stagnation meant definitely low morale in the leadership content, cutting-edge leadership content in the armed forces. So drastic action had to be taken. Suddenly they felt that the need was then to make a full colonel become a battalion commander. So from a half colonel, it became a full colonel. And thereafter, at the level of becoming a brigadier, you were close to 28 to 30 years of service. A stage came where by the time you became a brigadier, which is equivalent to, say, an IG of a police, or a deputy secretary in the central government, or a joint secretary in the state government, you were looking at retirement, even if you had a brilliant career, and there was much that you could do in the armed forces. So therefore, and similar things were happening to the other ranks, that is, people below officer rank. Even after finishing their color service, Havaldar, that is a 3-stripe, what you would call in the Western Army, sergeant, would never get a chance to become a junior commissioned officer, and he would retire. So therefore, there was a necessity to reduce the age. Firstly, that is one. The second aspect is one must understand why this age youthful army is required. I would like to make it clear that nobody, not the normal non-servicemen and not the servicemen, would ever doubt the courage of the armed forces. But when the battle is joined, a person who's 32 to 35 years old, possibly in 9 cases out of 10 is married. In
Exactly.
9 cases out of 10, he has 1 or 2 children.
Exactly.
And during the time when he is now rushing towards the enemy with holocaust of bullets and bombs flying around him, I wouldn't say that he is not courageous, that he was not fails the bullets, but that element, I mean, you can ask the psychologist and the psychiatrist, they will tell you that little bit of element of fear of leaving behind his family, his wife and children, and the obligations that he has as a earning member would probably, I have not seen this kind of a thing happening, but this is something we grope with every day. It is part of our discussion in the army time and again, that it might suddenly give the difference between a win or a loss at a critical moment in time. Whilst the person who's 17.5-year-old or a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old who's unmarried, who has no obligation, so to say, and who knows he has come here with a passion in his heart to serve the nation, that critical at the point of winning or losing a battle, he makes the difference. We have seen it happening in Kargil when sitting at the top, the Pakistanis were raining machine gun bullets, and these youngsters were second lieutenant and lieutenant led. They were climbing up, getting mowed down, but they eventually went there on top. So therefore, there is always a feeling within the army that this critical issue of bringing down the age, having younger people command units. Now, you can't expect a 45-year-old colonel to keep pace with his young soldiers while climbing hills or going through mountains and cross country and all that. It is just not possible. So therefore, if he was himself of the age group of 30, 32, as was earlier on in 1971 operations and thereabouts his age, then you would find that he would be the right person. His company commanders are young, his lieutenants are young. He has a very youthful, soldier content, and therefore the battles can be won. And that is when, of course, battles are physical. Also, youthful age today is a necessity because these youth today are already, by the time they go to school and thereafter, very tech savvy. Every syllabus today is giving them the exposure towards handling these mobiles and laptops and other things. And all our modern generation, 5th generation weapons equipment that we are procuring, if you do not have a very thorough grounding and exposure to such tech, should I say, skills, it will be very difficult, except for possibly some units or some infantry units, very, very difficult to conduct yourself in battle, even as a young soldier. Operating a tank, a 5th generation tank is it's an impossibility if he doesn't know his electronics, if he doesn't know how to,
or rather, if he doesn't love his electronics.
And if he doesn't love his electronics. So all this has given across the spectrum. There is no gainsaying that there is nobody in the armed forces who will tell you that a youthful army is not required. So that is the second aspect, that because when you lower the age, he has less obligations, he is more courageous at the crucial point in the battle, and he's more tech savvy, more youthful, and physical prowess is there. And that is the reason why a youthful army is required. Thirdly, you have said as an officer in a critical situation, did you feel constrained by high average age of soldiers? Yes, I did. When I was a brigade commander, I was already crossed 50. And when I looked around and saw my commanding officers who was close to my age, I knew that he was huffing and puffing. I knew that if he was younger by about 10 years, it would have made an exciting difference in the kind of way he would have conducted the operations. And therefore, it is not only me. I'm sure if you ask this question of any service officer, he'll tell you this, that the high average age is a definitely critical component which will tie you down in battle, which will lower your, should I say, fighting edge. And therefore, all armies in the world try and come across a process of recruitment and training where the serving soldier is a youthful soldier, physically fit, mentally fit, with less obligations, more daring, prepared to take risks, and prepared to lay down their lives if need be, without being, for that, should I say, a split second, timid because of obligations that he has. This is what I have to say.
Sir, let's go to the second question. According to some unofficial statements, it takes 7 years to fully train a soldier. Now, assuming that we in due course, that will take time, of course, quite some number of years, when these Agnipath soldiers or Agniveers on short service, they will be 50% of the total force. Now, I'm assuming that they will be less trained or half trained. It is, does it signify the changing operational need of the army? And, where does these soldiers fit the bill with respect to the change, overall modernization in terms of technology and other details? So if you kindly elaborate with a bit of real life example, probably it might benefit the viewers.
Right. Now, the issue here is that everybody feels whilst an officer is being trained for 3 years in the NDA and then again goes on to train for 1 year more at the IMA before he becomes a lieutenant, that is 4 years of training. Whilst the short service commissioned officer is doing 10 months of training, whilst the other rank today, he is doing something in the nature of 6 months of, already 6 months to 8 months of training at the center. Is 6 months enough for him to be trained as a person below officer rank? Now, let me be very clear. This is my personal view, and most army officers, both retired as well as serving, will tell you that 6 months is sufficient time for him to be grounded into being a good soldier. Now, what does a good soldier mean? That means already he will have understood the system within which he will work. He will have known to use his personal weapon perfectly well. Okay. He will also know what discipline in the army means. He will know map reading. He will know navigation. He will know patrolling. The bare recruitment of basic needs of a soldier, there is no doubts in my mind that 6 months is more than enough to train him. Now, where does his specialized training take place? This particular soldier who will now go to the infantry unit, there is not much of a problem for him because his training is so oriented in the regimental centers that it is an extension of what he does. From his personal weapon, he will only handle certain amount of support weapons which is there in the unit. These support weapons are not very intricate, and they are easily made to be understood by a soldier within about 2-3 weeks of what we call support cadres that we carry out in the units. It's a regular feature which is continuous. It happens. Like a personal weapon is, say, a Kalashnikov rifle. A personal weapon is, say, INSAF rifle. But a support weapon is a machine gun. A support weapon is a mortar. A support weapon is a recoilless rifle. So these are other support weapons which he can learn within a matter of just 2 weeks. And if his aptitude is good, if he's got the passion to really learn, he can do it within 1 week. There is no doubts in my mind. So therefore, insofar as those who are going to the infantry units, it is not much of a problem.
For the benefit of viewers, sir, infantry means those who are fighting at the front.
Yes. Infantry is the largest component of the armed forces. These are the frontline troops. These are the troops actually.
The soldiers that we imagine.
Yes. These are these who get physically into contact with the enemy, who hold ground, who force the enemy and capture his ground. These are the infantry soldiers. These are the ones who climb hills. These are the ones who will cross rivers. These are the people who will go and physically hold ground or physically defend ground and physically get into a combat with the enemy. So this is not much of a problem. His 6 months of training in the regimental centers and his extension of training that he gets in the unit moment he reports, within weeks, as he is allotted his supporting arms, he will be able to do it. And mind you, in those 4 years, he's always with a buddy. His seniors are there to train him also. When he's going on a patrolling, it is not that he should have known everything about navigation and everything about map reading. There is that Havaldar who's leading him, who's got 11, 12 years of service.
So it is an on-the-job training.
On-the-job training, plus the fact is he's not left on his own. It is not as if as people are saying today, that you have got a kindergarten boy there and you let him loose and probably he'll not be able to sort of do the things in the right way. It is not that. He's being supervised. Obviously, when he's even attempting to use his support weapons, there are others who are professionals who have been there for 5, 6, and 10 years who are with him. And his duty at that point of time is so rotated that knowing that he's a raw chap who has just learned his weapon, he might only be the ammunition handler. Secondly, he might be the one who. So therefore, this is what happens insofar as the infantry units. Now let us take the person who will go to specialized arms and support services.
Right.
Person who goes to the logistics arms, there's not much of a problem. I'm sure you understand that if a person goes to Army Supply Corps or to the Army Ordnance Corps, where he's managing large inventories, and he has to now make sure that the inventory, the cycle of repair, maintenance, and all that is carried out in the right manner. And whatever equipment is required and stores are required and food, fodder, everything is required, is maintained to the troops at the right time. So these are also areas where not much of should I say, training is required initially. On-the-job training is sufficient to cope with all these services. We now come to the critical component of our armed forces, and that is the Navy. They are highly technical. The Air Force, flying 5th generation, 4th generation aircraft, their maintenance, their flying, their capabilities of keeping them absolutely ready to be operative at all times. The submarines. Now you come to the artillery. The guns today, the artillery handles missiles. They handle even nuclear weapons. This is the artillery component which will deliver the nuclear weapons if in need of war. So these are people who are going to be highly technical. Now, are these 6 months trained? No, they are not. Therefore, these are the people who will then, in that critical component, will only be given those jobs which they can handle and keep learning on the job. When they will become that 25% retained, they will get into the senior spot of doing certain amount of technical skill jobs, which they have already learned to some extent, but now they are perfecting. And during the rest of the course of the duration of the army armed forces that they serve, they will become experts. So therefore, to say that these people who have just done 6 months of service and then have entered these critical signals regiment or the artillery regiment or the armored regiment will be less than professional is not something which should be accepted, because they will be handled along with professionals who are there. There will be others who will be helping him learn it on the job, and his exact role at that point of time during these 4 years will be restricted to the kind of learning that he has already imbibed. It is only when he will be retained for further innings in the armed forces that he will graduate to becoming a little skilled performer with very, very technical equipment, which he will be handling subsequently. So therefore, I feel, and this is my personal views, and I have also discussed it among my colleagues and veterans, also serving soldiers whom we nearly interact on a daily basis, that 6 months, I feel, is sufficient enough to make them basic trained to report to their units and not be by any chance, should I say, an impediment to a professional army.
So if I understand it correctly, first of all, what you said is that there are critical areas. I mean, it is common sense that no one is going to give a rookie the responsibility to handle a missile. But the other part is that, if I understand it correctly, you can explain better, is that for example, you said about Navy. Now, Navy is going to add too many vessels, too many submarines. Okay, we are going to increase the fleet. When you increase the fleet, you need many areas of rudimentary job responsibilities. So
very true. Very true.
So these are the people who will get into those areas, and in the process, what they are earning is, in 4 years, they are being skilled in handling machines, in various things, wherever they are getting skilled in the basic skills with which they will probably enter into the job market once they are out of the army.
Absolutely. And imagine a person who's now working on a ship, even if he's a rookie, and in those 4 years, he's working within that environment. He's working in the, where he's seeing those diesel engines operating. He's seeing the entire system.
He is graduating into a seafarer. He is graduating into a seafarer.
And when he goes to the merchant navy after getting demobilized, and he's probably not staying on in the navy, he will be equally an asset. He will, and the little bit of gap in skills which are there in the merchant shipping and the professional navy, that I'm sure he will pick up within no time, because he's already graduated himself into skilling himself in that environment of shipping.
And we are talking this at a time when the global shipping industry is suffering from serious manpower crunch. So that way, what is going to happen is that the skill float in the market, the free float of skilled personnel in the market, is going to increase. You have actually answered part of the questions, which I'm going to ask you next. This is mostly, please understand, most of the questions I'm asking you is from the perspective of common man, okay, who are hearing these TV debates and getting confused every day.
Absolutely. They are not applying their minds to the correct things which you are asking.
Now, so some sections have expressed concern that these short service people will be easy fodder to the enemy fire. They will suffer from low morale, standing by the side of someone who is on permanent roles, and the subsequent inspiration to fight. Now, my questions to you, sir. Leaving aside war emergencies are different, we all know. But leaving aside war emergencies which didn't return to this country after 1971 and Kargil in 1999. So do you put a soldier with, say, 3 to 4 years experience in tense border zones or in as difficult areas as Siachen? And what percentage of the armed forces manpower are into disciplines that are deployed in direct combat positions, under regular circumstances?
Yes, let me just explain this to you in a very, very absolutely, in a way that everybody will understand. Take, for example, this new recruits, these Agniveers have reported to the unit. Possibly in an infantry unit, at the first go, when they finally finish their training, and they are going to only replace that many people who have already been pensioned off from the earlier lot. So during a period of 1 year, say about 20 people from the infantry unit had finally retired and gone home. So 20 people have moved in. These are the Agniveers. Now these 20 people have got mixed up with 800 people. They are not being allowed to do their work single-handedly solo somewhere. Not also are they going to be grouped as a 20 Agniveers and given some operational task. They will be part of the already existing organizational setup. Suppose out of that 20, there are so many sections in an infantry battalion. Each one is slotted into one of those sections. A section has 10 people. Already the section commander, who's a Nayak, has probably got 15 years of service, 14 years of service. Others have got varied degree of service from 6 to 8 to 10 years in that section. This Agniveer has now come in as a raw recruit, like a second lieutenant or a lieutenant goes into an infantry unit initially and joins the army with the other senior officers mentoring him, guiding him. Therefore, when there is an operational task given, it is mostly given in sections, in platoons, in companies.
Okay.
It is rarely given in just 2 or 3s. Those are given to special forces. These are elite forces, the paratroopers who go deep into enemy territory and they are
highly technical jobs.
Those are highly, I mean, you can't even think to imagine those kind of roles that the other people, the special forces play. I am not going into that at all. These are not Agniveers for that special forces. So this chap, he's there as part of a 10-member group, and he's also being given a task depending on the kind of traits that he shows, the skills that he has picked up in the regimental center. Somebody might be very good and already showing signs of a definitive kind of a soldier who will be retained subsequently. And somebody might be just about average. So that section commander also knows how to utilize him, where to put him, who should be supervising him, what kind of a job will he be given. Therefore, I see no reason why this youngster, this 17.5-year-old boy who's now 18, possibly when he joins the unit, will have any difficulty. In fact, he will feel very secure, very confident, and also look around him in a very safe environment. With all the confidence, he'll face the war zone. I therefore feel that thinking that this chap is going to be pulling down the professional edge of a unit is absolutely wrong. In fact, I maintain he will be enhancing it, because with his enthusiasm, with his interior mind telling him to always show performance so that he's retained in that 25%. From day one, he will be out to sort of, make sure, if he's got a passion for the army, that after 4 years, he will be retained. Therefore, I personally feel this is no ground. This is no ground for anybody to suspect that he will try and pull down the unit's professional capabilities.
In fact, unless you give the younger generation responsibility, how will he learn to take responsibility? How will he grow up? I mean, if we don't give him responsibility, how do we know whether he delivers or not? We have to see a test case here. Sir, just a subsequent question, it came to my mind. Earlier, you used to take soldiers through your rallies and all those things, and then you used to retain him unless he is court-martialed or something. Here, you will be taking on surveys, and actually this is a selection process. On the job, it is kind of an intern, but paid very handsomely. You are giving an opportunity to come into the elite group.
We were always getting the best. People might not know that for 100 vacancies, there was thousands lining up to join the army at any rally. These rallies even now will continue, because we have to test them physically. We have to thereafter make a merit, and thereafter, after making a merit, we have to take these best into medical. After checking them medically, again a merit is going to be formed, and subsequently we have to have a written test. Only then will these chaps enter even this 4-year Agnipath, and this new recruiting system of becoming an Agniveer. Thereafter, imagine we have raised the level to such an extent that out of these selected lot also, we are going to retain the best of the best.
Exactly.
Who know that they have to perform and perform to their best, otherwise they will not be retained. However, mind you, even in the Air Force today and the Navy, as well as the armed forces, we are seeing a lot of very brilliant officers leaving the Army halfway, Air Force halfway, to seek greener pastures. An Air India pilot, suddenly you will find an Air Force group captain or a wing commander, he will, moment he reaches his pensionable age of 20 years of service, he takes premature retirement, he's already getting a pension, he then goes into the greener pasture of becoming a pilot. And thereafter, he's doubled his income, he's become a civilian, he's looked after his family, he doesn't have to again be a, absolutely a should I say, a man with no family life. He's now absolutely stable. So these are happening all the time. But amongst this Agniveers, the best of the lot will still be retained. So what I'm saying is, you are absolutely right that apart from the 6 months grounding training that everybody has got, he's done 4 years of skill training as it is again in various units and subunits that he has joined, specialized or otherwise, Air Force, Navy. Apart from these set skills, now we have taken the best. And those who are now being demobilized are not the rejects. I am again saying time and again,
yes,
we do not want to stigmatize them by saying that they are rejects. They are a wonderful lot. It is our requirement now to make sure that they have an opportunity to get a second career.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure any government dispensation which looks at his country's youth in nation building will look after them, and they will, I'm sure.
But back to the topic, sir, when you are taking, so there will be a huge skill jump in the 50% in now who will be the regular soldiers. Given this, will there be a huge skill jump upwards in the regular soldiers?
There will be. I'll just give you a small example. When we joined the army, I am a 1969 batch officer. I visited recently, just a few years back, an artillery regiment, and I saw the drills that they were carrying out, where everything used to be manual in my days, where everything used to be physical and manual, so to say, and very, very little mechanical. Today, I saw youngsters, raw recruits, who are working with iPads. They were keying in the complete program in their iPads and operating the huge, big guns that they were already firing from their gun positions. So can you imagine the electronics that have taken place, the kind of IT tech savvy that they are doing?
The world has changed.
World has changed. Today's infantry Jawan sitting in a bunker in the western border facing Pakistan is handling surveillance equipment in that bunker of a kind which the civil has not seen also. Therefore, you can imagine, what technical skills he is acquiring. Now, tomorrow, if that boy is coming in and going into a CCTV manufacturing company, imagine the asset that that company has. I am sure, in every which way, the company or the mainstreaming of these people into corporate world, wherever they go, they will make their mark. I am sure.
So considering the world move towards, smaller army, apparently, in a more technical, smaller and a more technically oriented army or defense forces. If this is at all true, does India require to reduce its, should India reduce the size of the army, and does this Agnipath scheme has any role to play in that future army, future in that perspective?
I'll answer it in two ways. Firstly, downsizing of the armed forces has always been a subject which has been wargamed by all the three services. And it continues to draw our attention. That is one. Second is the teeth to tail ratio of large amount of troops being employed in sedentary kind of employment for which they were not trained is another thing which we keep on wargaming all the time. Therefore, today, where robotics has come in, applied intelligence has come in, where everything is becoming absolutely
drones have come in.
Drones have come in. Therefore, there is now scope for downsizing. Any country which does not downsize is creating a problem for himself or herself.
Yeah.
Second aspect is because it is ballooning expenditure, and you look at it from the point of view of generating employment because your country has a vast impoverished lot, then armed forces are not the answer for giving them employment. It is not an employment generation armed force. Therefore, downsizing, I personally feel, as technology catches up, correspondingly downsizing must take place so that your entire armed forces are what we term it in the army as leaner and meaner. That is one. The second aspect is, look at today's war. I'll just take 30 seconds to explain this to you. Even today's war and 5-10 years into the future, it is going to be mostly initially a physically contactless limited war. It is going to be initially starting off with jamming your communications.
Cyber war.
It is going to be jamming not only your communication, electronic warfare by ensuring your supply chains are interrupted, ensuring your major capacity munitions factories are down and put out. Your cyber war will start. There will be long and short-term interdiction depending on the kind of scaling of war that takes place. In a short-term interdiction, the enemy will take out your infrastructure, critical infrastructure. In long-term interdiction, it will do damage to your seaports, your railways, your huge, warehouses, so that it cripples you economically and it will destroy your supply chains. Then it will proceed to attack you with what we call LRPWs, long-range precision weapons. And all this is happening where you are dominating the skies with your surveillance capability and anti-defense potential. So in this entire scheme of things, where do you find the Agniveer who's sitting in that infantry in maybe a hellhole or a bunker? Yes, his role will come. Eventually, he is the man who will then, after the dust has settled, will venture out of his bunker, will get out of his dog hole, will get into grapple with the enemy. He will get killed or kill the enemy. He will hold ground, capture ground. His role will come, but subsequent. And his role will be already created for him in a manner that whilst the artillery has pounded the entire area and made things very, very easy for him, it is not going to be difficult for him to step out and do the last, as they say, samurai. I therefore feel that downsizing will take place as critically we move forward to a more technologically advanced army. And secondly, it is going to also retain its cutting edge, that much soldiering of frontline infantry soldiers, which are required, maybe because in the hills and other treacherous areas in jungle, they still have a great role to play. He has to go there physically and plant the flag and then sit there and make sure nobody takes it back from him.
Right. But so probably, I was looking at some figures between FY17, financial year 2016-17 and financial year 2018-19. The armed forces recruited 1.65 lakh personnel. So that makes it roughly 55,000 a year. As against that, we are recruiting some 46,000 soldiers. And this is the only route that they say today, the generals, all three services, tri-services said that there won't be parallel recruitment of regular soldiers. So that means that, probably, and of these 46,000 soldiers, only 11,000 will make it to the long-term service, regular service.
Very true. Very true.
So that means we are going to, if this is the trend, I don't know, you may be telling us better that whether this will be the kind of recruitment trend in the future of lesser and more efficient forces. Is that the direction?
I personally feel this was in the coming for the last 2 years. This is a transformational change. Indian Army is today changed forever. Let me just put it to this way because of two distinct things that have happened. One is that the all-class composition of the Indian Army will change the entire British past. It will wipe out the kind of existing infrastructure that we maintained in the Indian Army. Indian Army will be synergized army like the Indian Army's officer cadre is. It is not going to be a Bihar regiment or a Dogra regiment or a Kumaon regiment. They might retain their names. It is now going to be an all-class army everywhere. Already 75% are already all-class. But now there is not going to be any quota. It is a transformational change. Today, suppose there are vacancies of 40,000 people. And if luck would have it, 29,000 come from only Tamil Nadu and they are the best. Then these 29,000 will get it.
I mean, if these 29,000 are the best, that is the criteria.
Yes. And therefore, they will have to be taken into Bihar regiment, Dogra regiment, anywhere where there are vacancies. So what has happened in the Indian Army is like the officer cadre.
Okay.
So officer cadre as it is from time immemorial, from the British Army days, has never been a quota-based army. Officers get a parent regiment when they join on commissioning, and that is where the bonding starts. He stays in that regiment. It is something like the IAS. He comes to the West Bengal cadre. He is now a West Bengal cadre officer. And he retires as a West Bengal cadre officer unless you call him to the center. Similarly, in the case of an officer of the Indian Army, he gets a parent regiment. He serves throughout in the regiment till he is finally finishes his regimental duty. Then he goes out and becomes a brigade commander. Then he has no regiment. He then becomes a general officer. He can be put anywhere. He can command non-Bihar regiment. He can command a division, a corps command, wherever he goes. Therefore, the same system will come in insofar as the Agniveers are concerned. It is not that only this much of quota has to be taken now from Bihar regiment and this much. Anyone who comes in the merit, he will definitely make it. And therefore, this is a transformational change which has taken place. Now we will see where the passion really is, who's really good. And soldiering is not being done by that myth of, some races being better than others. It is not so.
So that takes me to the last question. When we look at the profile of army, states like Punjab, Haryana, which is barely 2% of the population, have 5, 7%, 6, 7% or more than that share in the army. Punjab is, I think, close to 8%, and Haryana is close to 6%. Obviously, I mean, let's assume that they are better soldiers than others. I mean, even if I assume, but the ratio is too high. So is it solely, I mean, if you take, for example, West Bengal, the presence is very limited. So is it solely because of quota or also because of the ability?
No. Let me explain this to you. Earlier on, you could say that many vacancies which came, say for West Bengal, there was, according to the ratio of the population of West Bengal, a certain amount of quota had been fixed. Now, in many cases past, we had seen that these were not completely filled in. So there was a lot of vacancies which were there, which were not filled in, since people were not coming forward to become Jawans.
So the quota is reduced.
So the quota already, these vacancies were given to others who had more regiments and wanted to come. After all, the vacancies have to be filled up. But now it is not the case because of unemployment and because now they know the army better. There is a better interaction. Even the Bengali youth also knows what the army is about. He must have seen his uncle, brother, parent, somebody or the other in the armed forces, and knows much more about the army. So now he's not, not only not terrified, it is not the unknown for him. And he doesn't lack courage. He also is filling up the vacancies. That is one. The second aspect is, in this present environment of the new recruiting system, there will be no quotas. If the Bengali does better, he will grab all the vacancies. And why not? Because the armed forces, like I said again, is not an employment exchange. It is not a Manrega. It is not a place where you are giving jobs only, filling up the jobs for the society. They have to be there to lay down their lives if need be. And we want the best. So therefore, it is an all-class, all India kind of a recruitment which is going to take place. It is transformational. I am looking forward to great days, Mr. Bose. I think it will be a great day. Before I end, let me just give you two things, which is the other side of the story. In September 2019, a decision was taken by the government of India that $139 billion would be put into motion for the next 5 to 7 years for modernization. But it did not take place. Why? The defense budget from 2009-10 to 2019-20 increased by a factor of only 2, but pension budget by a factor of 15. So the capital expenditure, where was it? We were dying to modernize. We couldn't. Supreme Court were giving ruling. No, you give permanent commission to these lady officers. You give permanent commission to them. You give permanent commission to that. That is not how. Army is not there to do social welfare projects for the society at large. If you are going to do that, you will face a 62 again. But there is a moral story which I must end with, Mr. Bose. Somebody has written to me, a colleague. He wrote to me on this entire thing while weighing the pros and cons of the new system. He said, an important which totally overlooked in the Agnipath scheme is when a soldier joins the army, there is an unwritten moral and ethical contract between the soldier and the state. The soldier vows to fight, shed blood, and if necessary, give up his life in defense of the country. The state in turn vows to honor and look after him and family and recognizes his willingness to sacrifice all in the defense of the country. The moral contract has universal applicability since time immemorial. I only hope, Mr. Bose, that the 75% which are demobilized, the government of the day, the dispensation, society at large, do not forget this aspect, that this 75 is also considered Agniveers throughout the rest of their lives, notwithstanding what job they take thereafter.
Right. That's what the Tri-Services Chiefs also said, stressed today, that once you are a part of army, you belong to the family.
Because this is our future. These are the people who, if they do well in life, having done that 4 years, it will become, I will tell you, a absolutely transformational change in the entire nation. People will first join the armed forces, train themselves, join the NCC, then go into civil stream and become great people in life. But the moral and ethical duty must be there, done by the government of the day.
So in a way, we are seeing the birth of the Indian Army from the Royal British Army. Finally, the Indian Army is shedding all ties of Royal British Army.
I totally agree with you. It is something which we were all, it has given me goosebumps because I have realized in 35 years in the army, we were timid in taking this kind of decisions. I think time has come now that maybe because of this regime, I do not know. Maybe the other regimes would have done better, but the time has come and we have taken a decision. God willing, they should not roll it back like the farmer laws.
Absolutely. That all of us are hoping that they must not roll it back. The reforms must continue.